Hi, this is Phyllis James coming to you live from our studio in downtown Tucson. It's Monday, October 9th. Let's talk local headlines. A group gathered at Christopher Columbus Park in Tucson on Sunday morning to call for the removal of 3 Confederate monuments. The group included members of Tucson Surge, Tucson Water Protectors, and LUPE Tucson. These organizations have all joined a national movement to take down monuments that they say celebrate white supremacy, racial violence, and colonialism. On Sunday, the group gathered signatures to officially change the name of Christopher Columbus Park, which they will use to petition the city of Tucson. In addition to the name change, the group is aiming for the removal of a Confederate monument at Picacho Peak, north of Tucson. Opponents to the removal say that the monuments represent U.S. history and should not be taken away. But organizer Edward Cott said that if it's history that represents the extermination of people, that's not a history we should celebrate. Arizona Representative Ruben Gallegos bashed a series of immigration reforms demanded by the president. On Sunday, Trump released a list of reforms in exchange for extended protections for DACA recipients. The list included overhauling the country's green card system, a crackdown on unaccompanied minors entering the country, and building the southern border wall. Gallegos called the list nothing more than a wish list pushed by his most racist advisors, Attorney Generals Jeff Sessions and Stephen Miller. Gallegos also criticized the administration for releasing the list on Sunday evening, accusing them of trying to slip the demands past Americans. The DACA program was canceled early this year by the Trump administration and was given a 6-month buffer period for Congress to pass a permanent law on the program. However, many of the items on the list were declared untouchable by Democrats, so it looks more unlikely than ever that a deal over DACA will be made. The White House said that we're asking that these reforms be included in any legislation concerning the status of DACA recipients. However, it was unclear whether these reforms were considered non-negotiable or if the White House is just using them as a starting point for negotiations. The anti-homeless advocacy group Old Pueblo Community Services unveiled their new Housing First model to local leaders last week. The goal of the program is to place people who are homeless into permanent homes rather than mass housing. The organization says that permanent housing helps these individuals change for the better. They plan to partner with several apartment complexes across Tucson. The Arizona Department of Education released school letter grade records after initially attempting to keep them concealed. The department claims that they wanted to respect the wishes of the state education board and not release the records until they were finalized on October 9th. In a September press release, state officials said the results would be embargoed, even though no such legal framework exists. The release also comes after a reporter from the Arizona Center for Investigative Journalism was forced from the Education Department's main office in Phoenix. They claimed the reporter was trespassing and threatened to call the police after the reporter asked to inspect the grade results. But on Friday, the Education Department said the grades would be treated as a public record. In Arizona, the Education Department gives each school an A through Z grade based on a number of factors, including attendance, record keeping, and test scores. Arizona Representative Martha McSally removed a provision from a border bill that would allow the Border Patrol to avoid freedom of information requests. McSally said that removing the loophole was an important issue to clear up and that transparency is an important part of governance. Freedom of information experts called the loophole incredibly awful, and the removal was praised by the House Committee on Homeland Security. No explanation was given for why the loophole was inserted into the bill in the first place. The bill, H.R. 3548, authorizes $10 billion for the president's border wall, in addition to further funding for border security. Besides the closed loophole, the bill would also grant the Border Patrol leeway to avoid complying with numerous laws when operating on covered federal land. This is defined as areas within 100 miles of the southern border. The Border Patrol would also be able to refuse to disclose information on most of its border enforcement activities. CPB would be allowed to ignore 36 federal laws if the measure is approved. Environmental groups have strongly opposed the bill, claiming that operations will threaten sensitive wildlife in the area. However, McSally and others say that the Border Patrol agents need to have the ability to patrol public lands near the border to stop drug and human smugglers. And now in national and international news. As Puerto Rico struggles to rebuild after Hurricane Maria, another crisis approaches, this time involving Medicaid funding. A recent report by the Center for Economic and Policy Research found that the island will not have sufficient Medicaid funds to continue operating through 2018. If funding were to run out, 900,000 people would be cut from Medicaid enrollment, according to federal estimates. The report states that if Congress doesn't take action, then the island will exhaust its funding within a few months. From then on, Puerto Rico would be responsible for covering all its costs. This could be especially difficult in light of the hurricane damage, which left 90% of the island without electricity. Barbara Lyons of the Kaiser Family Foundation said that if funding were to run out, Puerto Rico would experience major coverage reductions, problems with access and treatment, and delays in payments to the healthcare providers. Another side effect could result in an influx of Puerto Ricans migrating to the mainland and straining state Medicaid programs. Nearly half of Puerto Rico's 3.4 million residents are enrolled in Medicaid, with the federal government covering about 57% of the island's Medicaid costs. But federal spending is capped, as Puerto Ricans only get about 15 to 20% of their total Medicaid costs paid because they don't pay federal income taxes. The report states that this system has forced the Puerto Rican government to cover a large portion of the cost from its own budget, which further contributes to the island's budget crisis. Last week, Republicans proposed giving Puerto Rico $1 billion over the next 2 years to cover the Medicaid gap in Puerto Rico. This funding would be part of a bill to fund the Children's Health Insurance Program, or CHIP, which will also run out of funding in a few months if Congress does not take action. But the Senate passed its own CHIP funding bill last week without the $1 billion to help Puerto Rico. So it's unclear if the problem will be addressed. We need medical. Oh my goodness. Over 2,000 people took to the streets in Russia on Saturday to protest in support of jailed opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Protesters chose Saturday because it is the birthday of President Vladimir Putin, who they say illegally imprisoned Navalny so that he couldn't participate in March presidential elections. Protesters chanted, "Russia will be free" and "Russia without Putin" as they walked towards the Kremlin and Parliament. Over 200 people were arrested as part of the protest, which the government said was illegally organized by Navalny's supporters. 1,500 protesters showed up in St. Petersburg waving red and white banners and shouting, "Putin is a thief," and "Free Navalny." Navalny is currently serving a 20-day jail term for violating rules on public meetings, but says that the charge is politically motivated. According to Russian law, individuals convicted of charges related to bribery cannot run for office. Navalny and his brother were prosecuted for embezzlement charges in 2014 and were placed under house arrest. Just this year, Navalny was jailed 3 times on various charges. A computer virus infected the cockpits of U.S. Predator and Reaper drones last month, according to a report by Wired magazine. The virus was first detected 2 weeks ago by the military's host-based security system at Creech Air Force Base in Nevada and reportedly logged the keystrokes of drone pilots. Officials said there were no confirmed incidents of classified information being lost or sent to an outside source, but the virus has been difficult to remove from the base's computers, according to U.S. network security specialists. One specialist told Wired magazine that they keep wiping the virus out, but it keeps coming back, although they think the virus is likely not dangerous. Military network specialists aren't sure whether the virus was introduced intentionally or by accident. They are, however, sure that the virus hit both classified and unclassified machines at Creech Air Force Base. So there is a possibility that data may have been captured by virus, then transmitted over the internet to someone outside the military chain of command. This is not the first incident of drone technology having network vulnerabilities. Many Reapers and Predator drones don't encrypt the video they transmit to American troops on the ground. Because of this, the video is vulnerable to be intercepted. In the summer of 2009, U.S. forces discovered days of footage on the laptops of Iraqi insurgents. They were reportedly using a $26 piece of software to capture the classified video. Oh my goodness. Wow. With the current virus, officials believe that it's spread to other removable drives from the drones. As a precaution, drone units at other Air Force bases worldwide have been ordered to stop their use. Ooh, technology. Wow, yes. Hundreds of thousands of people protested on the streets of Barcelona on Sunday to express their opposition to the Catalonia region declaring independence from Spain. Last weekend, Catalonia overwhelmingly voted to become independent, although the election was non-binding and not recognized by the Spanish government. Over 90% voted for secession, but opinions polls show that the region is more divided than it would appear. Turnout for the referendum was only 43%, with most residents who want to stay with Spain staying home. Since the vote, the independent issues has further divided Spanish society. On Sunday, a crowd of about 350,000 carried banners saying, "Catalonia is Spain, and together we are stronger." Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy said on Saturday that he would not rule out removing Catalonia's government and calling for a fresh election if it claimed independence. Earlier today, 2 Catalonia companies held board meetings to discuss whether or not they should move their headquarters outside the Catalonia region. On Tuesday, Catalonian leaders Carles Puigdemont will address the region, where it's expected that he'll say whether or not he'll seek independence. Puigdemont says that he hasn't had contact with Spain's government because they refused to discuss the independence issue. This was 5 on 20 News with Phyllis James. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to all our social media accounts for all the latest Creative Tucson news and content. Feel free to bother us at info@creativetucson.org. And next up, Joel Foster speaks with Kataya Karakovic, organizer of the Nasty Women's exhibit showing throughout the month of October at Bentley's House of Coffee and Tea. Thanks for watching, and stay creative, Tucson.